Hello and welcome to the Trail and Adventure Motorbike Podcast with me, Clive Barber, and my good mate, Noel Tom. For the days when you can't ride your bike, there's always the Trail and Adventure Motorbike Podcast. In today's episode, we're very happy to be talking to Paul Oxborough and Stuart Ringer, both of whom are representing Mental Health Motorbike. Mental Health Motorbike have built up a dedicated national network of mental health first aiders to support bikers and their families across the UK who are struggling with mental health issues. Stuart got in touch with us shortly after the Damien Demon Rides episode, where Damien talked very honestly and openly about his mental health struggles. And Stuart got in touch to suggest that we actually talk to Paul, who started Mental Health Motorbike. So this is the conversation we have with the pair of them. Just a warning, there is discussion of depression and suicide, so if you have younger members of the family listening in, this might not be the most ideal. Or maybe it is ideal because it is all about getting people, especially men, to open up about their mental health struggles. I don't know, you're a parent, you can decide. Let's get on with it. We are delighted to welcome both Paul Oxborough from Mental Health Motorbike and Stuart Ringer. Stuart got in touch with us and suggested we should be talking to him and Paul after our episode with Damien, where he talked about some of the struggles he'd been having. So we thought, what a fantastic opportunity to explore the issue a little bit and to get an understanding of what the charity does and how it can help anybody that is having a shit time.
Thanks for inviting us here tonight. My name is Paul Oxborough, known as Oxo to many. For many, many years, I've been working in international youth education, travelling most of Europe for the last 20 years. My history with motorbikes, gosh, it goes back to probably the mid-80s. Around about 13 years old, my best friend, they owned a farm. And we had a Yamaha, sort of the old fizzy, sort of zipping up and down the fields, no helmets, no PPE, just literally sunshine and chasing the women on the horses. That was the lifestyle, really. And I think that was the moment I fell in love with bikes. You know, suddenly I wanted to be on bikes, not four wheels. So the first thing I did when I passed my car test, was think about how do I get a motorbike licence. And at the time, Top Gun had just come out, so it was the GPZ 900R. That was it for me. Chasing that jet fighter down the runway. I thought that's going to be the bike that I'm on first. Couldn't sadly afford GPZ 900R, so I went for a GPZ 600R, and that was my step up from 125, which was like a rocket ship. Yeah, GPZs, probably spent a bit of time on them. Then I went on to the ZZRs. For some strange reason, I went on to a Suzuki DR350. That didn't last very long because I managed to hit a deer flat out down a country lane. So that put me in Stoke Mandeville for a couple of weeks. Put me off off-road bikes. Although it was ironic, it was actually on-road that I was hitting the deers. Moved on to Hondas. I got the VTEC, VFR, beautiful bike. And then sadly, Satan's bike came along. It was the GS Adventure. So now I'm on a GS Adventure. I'm doing lots and lots of miles now with the charity. And that was a weird one because I got plenty of bikes already, and I suddenly saw this GS Adventure appear up on eBay, and somebody said, it appears to be a good deal, there's something wrong with it. So sadly, I put a stupid offer in on a virtually brand new GS for about 10 grand, fully spec'd, got all the panniers on it, all the sat nav and everything. It sent me a message saying, if you can get this pushed through in a couple of weeks, you can have it. So I got a one-way ticket down to Bournemouth, 4.5 hours on a train. I thought, I'm going to find out if it's a duffer. And I rode it back, fell in love with it. And the first thing I did, I took it to a local independent garage in Chesterfield and said, can you check this bike out? It's too good to be true. It's obviously sort of very low miles, probably had about 5,000 miles on it. And it was just a beautiful bike. And they checked it out and sort of said, what are you doing with this? And I said at this stage, I'm going to set a charity up, a mental health charity for bikers. And they sort of said, we really need this. The industry needs this because we spend most of our time speaking to our customers about mental health. We hardly sell bikes, we sell a mental health service, and then people end up sort of buying a bike as a result of us supporting them. So he said, I'm just going to go and have a chat with somebody. 35 minutes later, he'd still not come back. And eventually he came back and said, look, he said, we love this idea. We want to help you set this charity up. we will take this BMW, we'll look after it, we'll service it every year, we'll MOT it, we'll put your new tyres on, we will keep this bike running free of charge. All you have to do is just get out there and do this. So I was quite emotional at this stage.
That's amazing, isn't it?
What's the name of this dealership?
SD Motorcycles in Chesterfield. Dave and Sean, the most genuine guys out there, beautiful guys. Literally, I was so emotional at this stage. For 5 years now, they've just asked for nothing. They just want the charity to exist because they know that bikers need it. So that was it, really. That's how it started. I suppose the backstory is I lost a friend like Stuart. We lost somebody that we loved. And that was a guy called Dale Caffrey, somebody that I'd known since he was 11 years old. And at 38 years old, he was a vet, animal vet, and he euthanized himself, put himself to sleep. He was so loved, he was a great guy. As I say, I've known him such a long time. Left a wife behind, a daughter behind, lots of family that loved him. And we just said at the funeral, we've got to do something. This tsunami of grief that runs through anybody dealing with suicide. I made a promise at the funeral that we would set something up. This is the crux of the charity, really. This is where it came from. The loss of a good friend.
My name is Stuart Ringer. I'd say on social media I'm a global motorcyclist and a campaigner for better care in the mental health space for those that suffer. My background with motorcycles has been pretty much throughout my life. I started riding when I was 11 years old. My brother, who's a couple of years older than me, had persuaded my father that it would be a good idea for him to buy a BSA Bantam, let him ride it round the garden. We were privileged kids in that we had a big garden to ride in. And my first escapade on a motorcycle was on a Saturday morning wearing pirate pyjamas and slippers as protection, and quickly found out that they were not set up to go flying into a prickly hedge with. I fell in love with motorcycles from that event. I spent a couple of years doing motorcycle courier work, but I know Damien did a bit of courier work, so I did a bit of that, so I had an affiliation there. Probably the most dangerous job I've ever done. When I was 19, I managed to blag my way into a motorcycle dealership in East London called Eddie Grimstead's. But I then spent the best part of 20 years working in the motorcycle industry. But I had a fateful meeting with somebody in Laos in Southeast Asia. Though I'd always ridden motorcycles, I'd never done any touring. I'm really passionate about travel and I was really passionate about bikes, but I never actually put the two together to think, well, I'm going to go off and do this on a bike or that on a bike. But then I walk into this hotel and there's two bikes. There's a GS and there's an Africa Twin. And the Africa Twin is from my company. It says Woodford Motorcycles on the number plate. I need to have a conversation with this fella. He then tells me these stories of riding through Iran, riding into Pakistan. The first vehicle he comes across is a Toyota pickup with a 50 caliber machine gun on the back of it. And it was just like, I want a bit of that. Literally 2 years later, I set sail for Southeast Asia, not knowing what I was going to encounter. So I rode through Turkey, into Iran, to Pakistan, to India, shipped the bike round to Singapore, and then just cruised around Southeast Asia. Came home after a year. I thought, sod it, I'll go to South America. I ended up doing down to Ushuaia and all the way up through. I actually went to the top of Canada to Inuvik, then round Alaska. And then in 2015, a friend of mine persuaded me to do the Trans-America Trail. Whilst I was on that, I met a Kiwi fella, and he was ex-New Zealand international 6-day Duro rider. He said, you should come out to New Zealand. And okay, got the GS ready again. I shipped that out in 2017, did top to bottom of New Zealand, shipped it over to Australia in Sydney, rode into the outback, into the middle, came back down to the coast and did a big circumnavigation around Australia. But there was always a trip in the back of my head that I'd always wanted to do, and that was Central Asia. Since 2010, I'd been looking after someone with quite serious mental health issues. By 2017, I'd been looking after her for about 7 years at this point. She'd almost been unable to get any kinds of benefit she had, but she'd been made homeless. But I did what I could to look after her. I had then taken the decision to move her into the property that I owned. But when I came back from this trip to Australia, the wheels had really come off the wagon, so to speak. So whilst I may have wanted to go off and do another trip at some stage, I realised that I was probably never going to be able to do that. I had taken on a lot of responsibility. My options were limited. Things from then onwards didn't really get better for her. And in June 2019, she'd had a period in a psychiatric unit, and then she came out and she drank and her body could no longer take it. I woke up one day and she was dead. That caused a great deal of strife for me and grief. And I really, really struggled to deal with that. And then, of course, we had COVID the following year, and that made everyone's life pretty challenging. I went to some pretty dark places by about 2021, and I made some big errors of judgment in relationships, and, I've lived to regret that. I thought I want to go off and do this other trip. But one thing I did realise is that you can't run away from your problems. We'll come back to this. It's about our inability to ask for help when we need it. And quite often it can be the hardest word to utter, just to say, I need help. The only support I ever witnessed for Gosha was her name. It really came from charities. It didn't seem to come from the NHS. So I decided to have the impact that I want, that I would use the trip to try and raise awareness, but also money for charities.
I lost a friend last year to suicide, and I actually sort of did a talk at his funeral, and I said, I'm almost certain that if I'd got in touch with him at the right time, I would have been able to stop him from doing what he did. And we'll talk about this later, but it's trying to spot the signs, isn't it, really, I guess?
I'd got no experience when I lost Elle, got no experience of mental health. I'd struggled myself, it was like seasonal depression that I tend to get. I think it's called SAD or something like that. Certain times of the year, I feel myself slipping. That's my extent of mental health. It just comes and goes a little bit. We get so many people, that we've reached in time, that we've got them into support, that we've had the police come and do welfare checks and get them into hospital. And at the time, people just want the pain to go away, and the signs are there. Sometimes we just don't spot it. So we decided early on with the charity to train as many bikers in mental health first aid. And for me, this has just been the backbone of our charity. So during COVID, the pandemic, we said we'd train 150 bikers and see what happens. And suddenly we was hearing so many remarkable stories coming out about how people have supported family members or work colleagues. So we thought this has got to be something we roll out. The course it's intense enough for it to mean something. It's about 15 hours. You learn about different mental health struggles and conditions. You're given a toolkit that you can support people in crisis, but you're also given tools on how to look after your own mental health well-being, your own self-care. And I thought, this would fit bikers very, very well. So we got 150 bikers through. And then somebody suggested stupidly, let's train 1,000 now. Bearing in mind it's a £400 course and we're a small charity with no funds. How are we going to do that? Positively, we just did it. We started raising funds, we started selling T-shirts and mugs and merchandise and badges, and that allowed us to subsidise that cost to £50. I think we're currently sat at probably about 950 bikers trained now. We hit 860, I think, by the end of 2024. That's when we wanted to reach that 1,000 target. We're very, very close now to reaching that 1,000, but we'll not stop. By the end of this year, I want it at 1,250 bikers trained, because that people will use that and lives will be saved.
So, Stuart, are you one of these trained volunteers, and how did you guys come across each other?
I'm a mental health first aider now. Paul and I met by a motorcycle industry contact, a gentleman called Tony Campbell, who is the CEO of the MCIA, which is the Motorcycle Industry Association. Him and I were having dinner one night and we were talking about the trip I had planned and to raise money for charity. He said, well, have you ever heard of this charity? I said, I hadn't. And he put me in contact with Paul, and we hatched a plan that we would use the motorcycle trip I was doing out to Central Asia to promote just mental health in general and the charity that he'd set up a few years prior.
We'll be back after a quick break.
Mental Health Motorbike is a free mental health first aid support charity for the motorbike community throughout the UK. We exist to create meaningful and purposeful opportunities for all bikers so that together we can grow the well-being of the biker community. We do this through one-to-one and peer support, events, training activities and projects, working in partnership with the industry, organisations and clubs. When life gets tough, we are here to support, to listen, to ride, to get some support. You can find more information at mhmotorbike.com. It's a funny thing, isn't it? Because when you do lose somebody, you always think, you know, what could I have done differently? And I guess, Paul, what you're enabling people to do is to do that preventative care. Certainly men of our age have no fucking clue how to do, right?
We are absolutely hopeless, aren't we, at reaching out? I think one of the things is we are of a certain demographic. You know, we grew up in the 70s and 80s. As I've probably mentioned before, I grew up in an area full of very, very tough men, you know, steel workers and miners, and they were going through, you know, the closure of the pits, the closure of the steel works, and there was a lot of grief around, there's a lot of frustration around, there's a lot of anger around. But the last thing they would show is any sort of weakness. So talking about how they were feeling normally ended up with them having too much to drink and having a good old fight. It wasn't really getting to the grips of what's going on deep down. So relationships broke down.
70s parenting, it's unrecognisable now, isn't it, really?
Boys don't cry, right? That was still a thing when we were kids.
If you cried, you got a good old slap for crying. Toughen up. Yeah, what's wrong with you? So you bottled it up, you internalised a lot of things, and, you know, it wasn't that healthy, really, was it?
The one real takeaway I had from doing the training course was the phrase that the trainer pretty much used straight off the bat, and that is, we all have mental health, and we have good mental health and we have bad mental health, the same as we have good physical health or bad physical health. There is so much stigma around mental health and saying your mental health is not good. I think that's one of the things that Paul Charity does great work on, to try and take that stigma away. It's okay to say, I'm not okay. Also, mental health is not always going to be there. It's the same as physical health. You might be a little bit under the weather today. It doesn't mean you're going to be under the weather next week. And I think that was, for me, probably the most powerful takeaway from that.
We're talking about the extreme results of problems like this, but do you think, are there always signs that somebody is going to go to that extreme length, or can sometimes people, can it just be missed completely?
Yeah, I mean, with Dale, his struggle was wrapped up in a sort of longer-term hereditary sort of disease that he had, something called Marfan's. So when I first met him at 11 years old, Marfan's is where your bones literally grow overnight. So most of your peer group at 11 years old are probably about 5 foot tall, if not smaller. But he was like 6 foot odd, you know, and his bones were just growing. Him and his brother got this Marfan's, and they were giants. You know, it's hard at that age, you know, those formative years. His father had died roughly the same age that Dale ended his life, and that was due to Marfan's hereditary thing. And he suddenly sort of thought that it was going to be a burden on his family, and we knew, and his family knew, that he was really struggling with coming to terms with the long-term implications of this. But he wasn't very openly sort of displaying or... And I think when you lose somebody, you're always left with this feeling of, could I have done something? Should I? Could I? But there's never any resolution to that. You're never going to get the answer. You know, you've lost the person. So we just thought, you know, we've got to try and get people to spot the signs. So sometimes it is very, very obvious. If you've done a little bit of training, you will cue into your friendship group a little bit more. You tune into them, and you'll sort of see that one of the gang's not laughing, really. They're not really enjoying this. And that's the moment where you can use that training to tune into them and just say, look, let's have a quiet word here. Are you actually all right? Are you actually all right? You know, and it's asking those difficult questions, because I think once people go into that sort of crisis element, you've got to really check, are you at risk of harming yourself? And by having the confidence to ask that question, you can actually, if they say, I really don't want to be here anymore, and I am actually thinking of ending it, you know, that's where you've got to get them to a doctor, you've got to get them to a hospital. And we've done that numerous times. There's so many times that as a charity we've had to do that. Inevitably, you know, if it's the end of a phone or the end of a message, we will do welfare checks. We'll find out where those people are, and we'll get the police out to come and pick them up and take them to hospital. And we've done that numerous times.
What does the charity actually do then? What are the processes that are in place? If I know somebody that is struggling, or I'm struggling myself, how do I get in touch or put somebody else in touch?
Probably the best way of making contact with us is through an event. We do a lot of events. So last year we did over 200 face-to-face events. Our teams were out across England, Scotland, Northern Ireland and Wales, and we did, lots of face-to-face events. In the early days, we could just have a couple of people doing those events, but now, because we advertise everything through social media and calendars, people know where we're going to be, so they'll come to us for help. So we can't get away with just having 1 or 2 volunteers. Most events, we have 3, 4, if not 5 volunteers. They will be first aiders. What we've said is, rather than sort of expect people to come to us, let's arrange a place that they're already at. So normally people will be at an event, they'll be comfortable, they'll be around mates, but they can pop over and have a chat with us. So a lot of our support, a lot of first contacts with people first getting to grips with they've got an issue around their mental health is meeting us at an event. So many times we've had grown men open up and, there being floods of tears on the stand telling us what they're going through. And that's something we've got to then deal with, so we need that first aider to be able to sort of say, right, let's get an action plan in place here. We're not going to let you leave us now until we've got some support in place. So the first step will be to get them onto our peer support group, to get them to look at what they probably need to do, and that's go and visit a doctor, get them to actually talk to their friends a little bit more, their family members. But we're also getting, the National Highways give us their welfare vans. Their welfare vans are absolutely brilliant. So we normally have at big events one of their welfare vans behind the gazebos, so we can sit in there and have a quiet space. We can make a cup of tea with people, and we can give some proper space. And the idea is, obviously, you don't want to look at a grown man crying their eyes out on a public event, so let's give them a bit of dignity, get them into the van and have a proper old chat with them. That's one way of doing it. We can do online support. We can do one-to-one support. So if somebody's on our peer support group, we've got 21 members of staff keeping that space safe. You won't be ignored on that space. You won't be laughed at.
The peer support group is basically a Facebook group, isn't it?
Yeah. What we decided is, where do people gather? People our age, they're either going to be on Instagram, they're either going to be on Facebook, they're not going to be on so much TikTok right now. So we wanted a platform that would allow us to capture those people. For a charity that's got no funds, that seemed a very obvious thing in the early days. A members-only group up on Facebook. You have to apply to get in there. I think we've got about 10 rules that people have to accept. It's very, very simple things. We don't allow people to talk about medication and dosages and give each other advice and things. We don't allow private messaging or friend requests. And we're very hot on safeguarding. But apart from that, we actively encourage our members that are on there, that are currently on there, to help each other. And that group, the amount of stories, I think while we were at Motorcycle Live this year, we had 4 people come and said, that group has kept me alive. And that was people from very senior management all the way down to sort of people just out tootling on their bikes, very, very lonely because they'd lost a wife. It's a very wide group, that one. It's a lot of women on there, a lot of young riders, old riders, but it's also a very safe space for people just to open up and say, I'm not doing well today, guys. Can you help me? And that's what our team do. We do it very well.
There's so much serendipity, isn't there, in both your stories about how you've come to where you're at now, and it's incredible what you've tapped into. It's just an amazing story. The fact that people have come to these shows and that's their first outlet is to see you at a motorbike show. It's very telling, isn't it, that people are desperate for help quite often.
We've got one guy that turns up every year. We met him at the Overland event, Saul Jevons' project, and Paddy's event, absolutely incredible. It's always been a bit of a spiritual home, the Overland event for us. It's been brilliant. The first guy, I think he was our first ever event there, and he came up and he was miserable. And we said, what's going on? He said, it's my last event here. I'm not doing any more. I said, what's going on? He said, well, on Monday, after I finish this event, I'm going to kill myself. So we thought, oh God. I said, well, that's all right. We've got a few days to try and prevent you not to do that. But he was in a bad way. He was in a really bad way. And literally, we sat with him morning, afternoon, evening. He came and spent time on the stand with us, and we just spent time chilling. And he was lonely. That was the crux of what he was dealing with. He'd lost a lot in his life, and he was going through a lot of medical stuff. We got him onto the peer support group, and we did all we could with him. We sort of said to him, look, we will pick up with you. When you finish this event, we don't want you to end your life on Monday. He said, I'm going to see how it goes. And then we didn't hear a thing for 6 months. I'm thinking, we've lost this guy. This could be the first one we've lost. Out of the blue, 6 months later, he put a post on the group actually helping somebody else. And we thought, is this the same guy? And we started chatting with him, and it was. And he said he'd been on the group after the Overland event every single day since. He says, and he always sees people in a worse position than he is on that group. And until he sees that there's not somebody in the worst position, he will stay alive and just try and offer a bit of encouragement. And every single year at Motorcycle Live, he just comes, the very first thing he does when he arrives there is to come to the stand and say, thank you, I'm still here. That's it.
Wow, that's incredible.
I bet you've got a lot of stories that have helped you to carry on, but that's a cracker, isn't it?
There's also some funny ones as well.
Yeah, we like the funny ones because we're not going to be able to take the piss out of mental illness or suicide, are we, in this episode, really?
The thing that we find working with the charity, it just brings out the best of humanity. People think it's all gloom and doom, but we actually said that, for our sanity, it's been the best thing that we've done, really, because you just meet some incredible volunteers. I don't know where else you would meet these characters. They've obviously got time on their hands to give to the charity, but then when you get to know them, you suddenly realise that these are good people. There's a lot of good people out there, and that's the thing that makes it very special for us. A bike breaks down at the side of the road, you will stop for that bike. There's not many other motorised vehicles that you would stop for at the side of the road, but bikers stop for bikers. So a big part of what our charity is about is if you're prepared to stop for a machine, are you still prepared to stop for that biker whose head's broken down? Because we should be, because we look after each other. That's what we do.
I really like the idea of the peer support group being a Facebook group. I certainly think for blokes, it's easier to go and write something on a forum than it would be to actually go and talk to a real life person. Maybe that's an easy way into seeking help. I shouldn't say that because I have no fucking clue what I'm talking about, really.
Well, is that true, Paul?
We've got a lot of people that we know they've set up a second Google Mail account just so that they can go onto the group completely anonymous. And that's about them just being able to talk on that group and get some support. And people just dip in and out of it. Some people go on there daily and help each other. I mean, it is a very heartwarming group in some respects. Because you sort of think, the 5 years that we've been running, I think we've actually kicked 2 people off that group. And it's all about sort of really reinforcing that you're here because people need you to be here or you need help from somebody. I think the motorbike community really respect the fact that there's somewhere safe that they can go and talk.
What are some of the triggers for people to have bad mental health? I mean, I'm pretty fortunate that my mental health is generally pretty good, but I had a period of depression about 10 years ago. I was on a really hard project, so there's a lot of stress there. I was travelling Monday to Thursday internationally, so I was absolutely exhausted. I had quite young children, double exhausted. And then my father died as well. So I had the stress, the physical tiredness and the grief. And that all added up. And I just got up one morning at 3:30 on a Monday morning and just thought, I can't do this anymore.
Did you cry?
Oh, God, yeah. I remember very clearly. I saw myself in the mirror just as I was about to go out the door and get in the car. And I just thought, no, I can't do this. And I just blubbed my eyes out and just went and had a cup of tea. And then, when the time was right, I rang my boss and said, look, I can't do this. And I think I was off for about 3 months on antidepressants, which I then took for about 8 months and did that stupid thing where you take your own decision to take yourself off the medication. But thankfully, in my case, I was kind of all right, actually. So, bereavement, stress, what are the other triggers that might put somebody into depression?
I think things like retirement, I think that can be a real trigger for people. Suddenly they've lost contact with people that they've spent most of their life around. You retire and then suddenly your life changes overnight. And so some people think, this is going to be really good. And then suddenly people think, I'm really alone. I'm really lonely. My friends are not talking to me anymore. My work colleagues are just not seeing anybody. So people slip into that loneliness. Bereavement's a huge thing. There's no getting away from it. The older you live, the longer you live, the more people you're going to lose around you. And that is a massive, massive red flag for a lot of people. So loneliness, stress, retirement, bereavement, money, relationships, they're all sort of pinch points, really. And I think what we find is when these start compounding on top of each other, you lose somebody to a bereavement, your relationship might start to get in a bit of problems. There may be financial sort of pressures associated with that, and it starts to slip into a vortex. With me, my situation, I think it's like a perfect storm. I'd lost my father-in-law plus 3 other people in my life quite close together. I was feeling unwell, physically unwell, bereavement, and I was overworking myself with the charity. And I just found myself in this spiral that was going very, very dark. And I think at that stage, you've got to reach out for help somehow, otherwise it'll suck you down to such a dark place. And for me, it did. I just woke up, it was probably 2 weeks before Christmas, and I just thought, I don't want to get out of bed now. So I didn't. Literally stayed in bed, switched everything off and said to my wife and my kids, I'm not getting out of bed. So I binge watched a few Netflix series on my iPad, and that didn't actually bring any happiness. But I slept, literally I just slept most of it. And eventually I started sort of coming out because they were bringing me lots of love and attention and lots of hugs. And at that stage I didn't need to get to a doctor. I just needed to rest and allow myself to process what was going on. But some people do need to get to a doctor, and that's, by speaking to people and putting a bit of a support plan in place with people, you can work out what's going to work for them.
You quite often see people saying on social media, look, I'm here for you. I'm here for anybody. If anybody wants to talk, just get in touch. Correct me if I'm wrong, but that's not going to help because most people aren't actually going to reach out. You need to be proactive in trying to spot the signs somebody is going downhill. Is that correct? What do you do in those circumstances?
I was just thinking about a post that we put out on our group this morning, and it was just a check-in post, literally about how are you doing today? And I think that's as simple as it was, how are you doing today? And within probably an hour and 10 minutes, there's 60, 70 people that have just commented. What we were doing behind the scenes is saying to our moderator team, right, guys, there's lots going on here for people. We need to be interacting with them. Let's just go a little bit deeper with them. Let's have a chat with them. Some of that conversation will take place with people off that peer support group because we know they probably don't want to get in sharing too much. And some of it will take place by other members just giving some encouragement. But we know that works for a lot of people. We've had people on that group for a number of years now, and that's all they need is to know that they're not alone. I'm feeling shit. A lot going on for me, but at least I can talk to somebody here. So, for some people, it doesn't need a massive amount to lift them up a little bit further. Some people, we need to get them to a doctor.
But this is a real illustration of how the internet, in some ways, has been a real force for good, hasn't it? In terms of as a medium for communication in this situation.
Yeah, it's like a double-edged sword, isn't it? Because social media is so toxic. We did a bit of a study, and we looked at a lot of biker groups that were badly moderated, and we realised within 10 posts, if it wasn't being moderated, it would become very toxic, and people would start having an attack of each other, and suddenly that then takes over the whole conversation. It's no longer about what the thread originally was about, and the worst of people come out then. People start using the keyboard as a weapon, and for me, that's the toxic side. So any group needs to be moderated if it's going to be used on social media.
Stuart, with your involvement with the charity, how has it changed you? Have things changed for the better for you? What have you got out of helping other people?
I think it gave me a great sense of not satisfaction, but I think I learned a great deal of empathy from dealing with what I went through and then speaking to people that the charity had helped. I don't think I've always been the most empathetic of persons through the years, but being involved with the charities, I think that really, when you see people that are suffering, then you put a bit of effort in, that is affecting something. It might not be affecting that person in front of you, but it's affecting somebody else who you'll never meet. I think that's always something about doing something for a charity, is that you may not ever meet the person you're actually helping. I did a sleep out for a homeless charity. I got talking to a lady there, and her son, who was 21, was a heroin addict. He said, I just can't get him to quit. And this woman just looked broken. How that's probably going to end. It was her only child. It is a disease, addiction, and it's how do you look after them, but how do you look after all the people around them? And the other thing that came up in talking to Paul is that I'm a core participant in a public inquiry into deaths in the mental health sector in Essex. And I'm a witness there because my friend was under the care of them. We just got on the subject, Paul and I, about when somebody commits suicide, the wave effect, the ripple effect. It could be 5 people, it could be 10 people, it could be 20 people. Paul said it could even be up to 100 people that's mental health will be affected by that one person taking their life. If you can just have one conversation with somebody that stops them taking that action, then you're helping prevent that poor mental health in over 100 people. I think if you can just do a little bit, it's so rewarding. It's paid back multiple.
At the very beginning of this, it saved your trip, did it, pretty much, when you did go to South America with this kind of purpose behind you? That must have helped enormously.
No, it was Central Asia, not South America. That was in 2008.
Honestly, Stuart, you've been on that many fucking trips. You want us to remember them all?
But did it give you a lot of purpose on that trip?
I think it would have been a very lonely trip if I hadn't have done that. Whilst I didn't go out and seek the help that I really needed until last year, I don't think I would have been able to done that trip without the fundraising element to it. It would have felt really vacuous and selfish if I'd done that. It made the trip. It adds a hell of a different dimension to it, but it gave me a great sense of satisfaction. And especially when you put up a post and you see a live donation come in and you think, okay, look, I'm doing the right thing. So yes, it really did complete the trip.
We know there are benefits to your mental health through just going out and riding your bike. My wife always says I'm a much better human being after I've been out for a ride. So sometimes she'll actually encourage me to go out. Get out, you miserable old twat.
We need doctors to prescribe an hour on your motorbike, please. But this is a very interesting one because what we focus on the raw end of mental health and poor mental health, the crisis end of it. We do a lot of preventative work. As somebody sort of said, one of our regional coordinators summed it up very well. He says, we don't have the ambulance at the bottom of the cliff anymore. We don't have it on the edge of the cliff. We have it inland. What we're actually doing is addressing the 5 ways to wellbeing in a very sophisticated way. And for those that don't know about the 5 ways to wellbeing, it's all about taking notice of the environment around you, really engaging in the here and now. It's about being active, using the bike as a physical exercise. It's about connecting with other human beings, giving something back, be a volunteer, give something back and enjoy the benefits of giving something for free. The final bit is about keeping learning from each other. You're surrounding yourself with people that have got stories, sort of learn from that. Don't sort of think you know all the answers, What motorbikes do when we go out on a weekend and we go and meet with our friends and we go somewhere beautiful, you end up having a chinwag afterwards and you start exploring all of these things in beautiful locations. That is why we've got the ambulance inland, is because we're doing all of these preventative things. One of the big things that we've been pushing this year, the latter part of the year last year, is mindfulness training. So people that we support, we've suddenly realised that putting them on an 8-week mindfulness course will give them such coping strategies that probably medication won't give them. When I first did that course, I'm thinking, this is a bit of hippie shit. This is a bit of weird, sort of meditation, breathing. But it's not until you actually, if you've got a good trainer that teaches you how to do that effectively, you can actually put yourself to sleep at night. When you wake up, your mind's spinning round. You can actually start getting your thoughts under control. You can manage that stress level a little bit more effectively. So what we're doing, the people that we're supporting that really need help, we're sort of saying, right, let's get you on one of these courses. If you're prepared to sit it through and be present for 8 weeks, we will give you this course, which is about a £400 course again. We will give it you free of charge. And the results we're seeing from that is just amazing. I've just had one lad and he was so ill that when we did the Ride for Life event, he couldn't actually come and meet with us. But his wife came and sort of said, I need to take some information about what you guys do because I think my husband's in a really bad way. So we sat and had half an hour with his wife and sort of said, look, this is, what we do. This is how it works. And she said, at some stage, I'll get him to come and speak to you directly. And this was Ride for Life. And then it was probably about a month and a half later that we managed to get him to come and visit us at Motorcycle Live. His wife and daughter had bought him a ticket on the pretext of getting him to come and spend some time with us on the stand. And I remember the whole family sat in the welfare van at the Motorcycle Live, and we had an hour with the family, and his daughter, got special needs. She was saying, Dad, I need you. I don't want you to be ill. And his wife was saying, I don't want to lose my husband. They were saying this, directly in front of him. And at this stage, I got my mindfulness coach, our fabulous regional coordinator, Mark Campion from he's Greater Manchester and Cheshire. I said, Mark, can we give him a place on this course? So we talked about it, and absolutely he sort of went through all 9 weeks of the training, and the email afterwards it's just said it's allowed him to rebuild his life. It's given him so much that the NHS has not been able to give him. I'm sort of thinking there's something in this. The simplicity of what we're doing is really working for some people. That was a really good thing. The whole mindfulness thing is really interesting.
I'm as cynical as they come. When I'm really, really stressed, I actually I use an app called Headspace, which is basically, it's just a guided meditation. And you do that 10 minutes a day and it absolutely works, especially like you say, when you wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning worrying about everything and nothing. And it's a great way of just clearing your head so you're not actually thinking about anything and you just drop off back to sleep again.
Yeah, Stuart and I were talking about this because Stuart's obviously been over in Asia and done a lot of that, haven't you? It's very interesting.
To second that, one of the things I always do when I meet other riders when I'm on the road is ask them about the one piece of home that they bring with them. I'm yet to have someone say they take a yoga mat with them, but I do take a yoga mat with me, and I practice yoga when I'm out on the road. When I've got a hotel room that's big enough to do it, I'll always do some yoga. It's pretty tranquil a lot of the time when you're riding a bike in these parts, but it's not always. Sometimes it's really stressful. And to do an hour's yoga, if you can, when you're on the move, is just fantastic.
Probably also helps you get your socks on in the morning, which I really struggle with.
Absolutely. I can touch my toes.
Paul, obviously you set this up in memory of your friend Dale, and that was quite some time ago, wasn't it? 5 years ago now. Has it helped you doing this? And do you take your own medicine?
It's funny. My wife sort of said, Paul, you literally could have asked to go out on your bike for an hour. You didn't need to set a mental health charity up to get permission. She said, I always feel guilty, when you tell me you're going out on your bike and it's charity work. But I do get lots of extra hours on my bike, which is fabulous. One of the things that we actively say to people is, the 5 ways to wellbeing, giving something back. Medication's not been the best for me over the years. There's a few times that I've tried medication. But what really helps for me, and I've worked this out over a number of years, is being out in the outdoors, walking. So clocking a lot of miles, being out in nature. I love nature. I've got a nature trail behind the back of my house. 5 years ago, I started moaning about how much litter there is on there. So somebody says, stop moaning about it and go and fucking clear it up. So I thought, well, I will. So 5 years ago I started, and it's probably about 12 miles of trails. And over 5 years, we've started to build a community of people that look after this. And I religiously go out now for 4.5 miles each day and litter pick. And sometimes if my mental health starts slipping, I'll do that route twice. So I'll do 9 miles. But I realise when I come back, I'm just in a different place. I switch my phone off. I don't take calls. But I literally exercise and walk. But I also litter pick, because at the very least, even when I'm feeling at my lowest and I feel like I've achieved nothing that day, if I've litter picked that trail and it's clean and the wildlife's not being affected by it, there's a sense of equilibrium in my life that I think I've achieved something, if it's only for the wildlife. And sometimes that's all it takes, but it's all it takes for me to just lift me out of that funk that I'm going through. So what we always say to people is try and find, that giving back. The only downside with it is this community has actually grown, and we set a Facebook group up for the litter pickers. There was about 10 of us on there now, and there's over 6,000 local people in this group now. So I can't walk around the trails without people stopping for a chat. I just want to be left alone. Leave me alone.
I bet it's really fucking tidy, though.
Oh, it looks amazing. Now the birds are nesting at the moment. We've got owls, we've got buzzards, red kites and everything on there, and it's just honestly beautiful.
So it'd be nice to finish on some good news stories, if you can think of any off the top of your heads. And then I've got one final question.
It's been an hour of good news.
Yeah, I said to Stuart, I really want to prepare for this one and try and do it properly and do a good job and do you guys justice. And I've listened to your episode with Simon 4 times. It's a good point you make, Noel. It's mainly positives, isn't it, that we're talking about tonight?
Yeah, it really is.
A good news story. Yeah, so again, this goes back to Motorcycle Live. We do so many things at Motorcycle Live, and I think, that's, again, a reflection of just how well the MCIA have looked after us. It allows us to get on there and do amazing things. But we had this situation where probably it was 2023, shortly after COVID, the pandemic, two little lads, 11-year-old and 13-year-old boys turned up with this bedraggled man at the side of them. He was very smartly dressed, Dickie Bow, and you could see that he was struggling. The two little boys actually sort of said, "This is my dad, and we don't know what to do with him because he said he's going to kill himself. And we know that he's a motorbike, and we know that you help people." I sort of said, "So what's your story?" And they said, "Well, we knew that Mental Health Motorbike was going to be at the show, so we bought my dad a ticket and brought him here." This is an 11-year-old and a 13-year-old. And then Dad just sat with us, and we sent the boys off to say, "Right, just come back in about an hour or so and we'll see what we can do with Dad." So the boys went off to enjoy the show, and Dad was in a really, really dark place. So one of our volunteers, a great guy called Weeble. Weeble's an illustrator. He runs something called Weeble's World. A really amazing guy. And he sat down with this guy for over an hour. And every time this guy sort of tried standing up, he suddenly realised he still wasn't feeling right. So he sat back down again, and Weeble just spent so much time with him. He was really struggling. There was a lot going on in his life, and the very fact that his two children had brought him here because they loved him was, something to hold on to for him. And we built a little plan together. And again, off he went, after an hour or so, hopefully got him into a slightly better place. And again, we just didn't hear anything for 6 months. Again, he appeared on the group, and he had got a very unusual name, so that we knew there wasn't anybody out there with that name. And we suddenly saw that he was helping other people and posting really positive things. So we managed to track him down off the group and have a conversation, how are things. From the show, he'd realised the impact of what his children had done for him and the magnitude of that, and realised that he'd got two incredible young boys there. That was the catalyst for him reaching out and going to the doctors, getting help. But again, he'd sat on that peer support group for so long, just getting support from it and reading other people's posts. But, we're at a stage now with this guy that he's going to be doing work with us. He's going to be, getting involved with us. To see that level of, we knew that if he'd not reached out at that moment in time, he probably would not have been here with us, because he was at rock bottom. And just that intervention, that lack of care, that he got from some complete strangers. And it wasn't me that did it. It was Weeble. He just got a credible way with people. And it was heartwarming to see that long-term journey of this guy still being with us. So it's not exactly a funny story, but it's a very heartwarming story, that this guy is still there. His boys have still got a dad. He's getting out on his bike and enjoying life a little bit more now. Just one other thing as well, a little bit darker. I don't know whether you can use this, but I remember sort of supporting somebody that was, we got to the hospital, the police got out, did a welfare check, smashed the door down, got them into hospital. And that's not nice when you've taken an overdose to be, I think some sort of carbon is flushed through your body and things. And it's not a very nice procedure. But I remember 6 days after that, we got that person to hospital, them phoning up and saying, "What right have you got to save my life?" I was sort of thinking, not a phone call I was expecting, that one, because it opened a very moral question for me. Is what right do we have, if people choose to end their life? And all I could think about is you actually phoned me up to ask me to pass on some information. So it would suggest that was unfinished business. You'd actually rung me up for a purpose. So it became my duty then to try and help you survive. Fortunately, this person is in a good place now, and a few years down the line, they are happy again, and it was just a blip in their life, and it's passed. That whole sort of thing they've moved on.
As a final question, what would you say to anybody that is currently struggling with their mental health? What should they do?
I think if somebody is out there sort of struggling with their mental health, with the right support and the right interventions, you can get through this. Things can change. So the important thing is find somebody that you trust. Tell them that you're not coping. Tell them you need some help. Be really upfront and say, "I need some help. I am not coping." And ask them to help you put a plan together, because you need help. And I think that's the thing. It's the hardest thing, but it's finding a group of trusted people that you can actually get some support from. Very often you've got those people around you. You've got best friends. You've got people that care about you, because they really would want you alive and not dead. They're with the ones that are absolutely in floods of tears at your funeral. They'd rather you be there. All I could say to people, if you're really struggling right now, get yourself to a doctor, get yourself talking to family and friends, find those people that you trust and let them know you're not coping, because it's more common than you think. There's a lot of people out there that's not coping right now, and there's no shame in talking about it.
hats off to you, Paul and Stuart. It's just incredible what you've done. We don't often talk to people that save lives. We generally talk to people that are as selfish as us, don't we? Who just
How many bikes have you got? I've got 6. I've got 7.
all that nonsense. So it's
I
amazing
think I've got a few bikes.
to talk to people that have literally saved countless numbers of people. It's just unbelievable.
It's absolutely amazing what you've managed to achieve, Paul. You probably don't have a check mark against every life you've saved, but it sounds like you've saved quite a few people, so that's remarkable.
And the important thing is it's not me that's done this, it's a group of people that have really sort of invested into this. You know, it is almost addictive. Once you start supporting people, you sort of think, you know, there's a lot more out there.
Yeah, Paul, I'm sorry, I'm going to have to stop you there, mate. It is you. You've qualified 950 mental health first aiders, and you're currently helping 3,800 people. It's a lot to do with you, mate. It really is. You couldn't have done it without everybody else. But
Dodgy man and his dog in the garage with no clue, you know. And I think all we've done is pulled a team together that has actually worked because this community needs it.
there you go. A massive thanks to Paul and Stuart for doing that. Really fascinating stuff, and what a thing that they've achieved is incredibly impressive. If you want to find out more information about Mental Health Motorbike, please go to mhmotorbike.com. That's mhmotorbike.com. There's lots more information on there about the various events that they're going to be at. There's links to allow you to donate cash, which obviously they need to train more and more volunteers. You can register as a volunteer there yourself, or if you need it, you can get some help. Hey, listen, if there's anybody you know or maybe yourself are in crisis, please just dial 999 or get yourself to the nearest hospital. If your needs aren't so severe, then get yourself onto Facebook and sign up to their peer support group. I think I might do that myself. All right. See you next time. Thanks for listening. We really appreciate your support. Don't forget you can follow us on Facebook and Instagram. And if you really appreciate what we do, you could consider supporting us on Patreon or buy us a coffee. Links are available on our website, which is tampodcast.com, tampodcast.com, where we also have a limited selection of branded stuff. But either way, please keep listening and spreading the word. See you next time.